send us a message with the line. But until then, we are going to end with the one true line.
Oh,
it's an egg.
It's been an egg this whole time.
It's always been an egg.
What are we, some kind of egg?
Hello, and welcome to StoryFellas, the podcast where we make stories and we break stories. I'm your host, Tommy Antonucci.
And I am your host, Zach Lovelace.
We're here. We're not at the same place anymore, Zach.
Nope. You're not in my garage. You are back in your own home. And I haven't moved. I'm still sitting in the same place.
Yeah. I was like, aren't you going to walk me out? And you're like, I'm staying in this chair. I'm never leaving.
Yeah, I'm like the orangutan in the new Jungle Book movie where like he gets up and his like butt hair has like been dried to the ground. It's the most disturbing moment in that film, despite the fact that it was a remake that was unnecessary. Anyway.
Well, I'm excited to be here, tell some more stories. We had our guest last week, but now it's just us, two of us, and we're going to get right back to same old. We
had dear old Johnny with us, and we told an amazing story called Kaboom. And for those hardcore StoryFellas listeners, you will know the plot and everything that goes with that. But I wanted to do a little double tap on that episode because afterwards,
all right, double tap.
I'm gonna double tap just for a second for those who have listened to it. And if you haven't, just go back an episode, listen to it. You'll enjoy it just as much as this one, I'm sure. But this last episode was about love. It was a romantic comedy, and we had a strong theme of a florist main character, a woman who falls in love with a fireworks vendor who burned down her father's business back in the day. They kind of go from enemies to friends and then to lovers. Course of a kind of crazy plot, kind of like crazy rich Asians where you just have super rich bride and groom that they're hired. They're both separately hired to help them in their destination wedding. But that said, we didn't hit on this, just what I thought was a really profound thematic setup that was there, low-hanging fruit, and we didn't take it.
Yeah, we actually we're all talking after we finished recording, and we kept on hitting, it's like everyone went home and then we struck gold and we're like, shoot, we should have said this. So yeah, Zach, explain a little bit more. It's some theme. There's
this idea about love, especially in the West, that it is just this hot, immediate, cupiditous or whatever, emotion. It overwhelms you. You fall into love. And it's something that is like almost involuntary, that you sit on a plane next to someone and whoa, I'm passionate with love. I'm infatuated, and I'm again. It goes from hot, it's an immediate hot, which is like a firework. It's just the fuse is lit and then it explodes. Yes. But what a lot of people don't tell you is that it then gets cold. And I think a lot of people might be able to actually relate to that just in dating, even in those who have maybe been in longer term relationships as well, that it does take work to keep it that hot. And that hot is actually kind of unsustainable. So real true love is when you don't have feelings for each other and you actually do something. And I think there's actually something pretty ancient involved with that in terms of it's easy to love people who love you back. It's not easy to love somebody who doesn't love you. That said, they should love you if you're, in a relationship with each other. But the other side of that coin, thematically in this story, is a botanical one. And I think that's actually more true to the nature of love, that it's low and slow and takes its time to build up. And we were talking about how, I think it's in Tim Keller's Meaning of Marriage, where he talks about this kind of thing, where the Eastern idea of love, there's a lot of arranged marriages, and they start off completely cold, but they work their way into being hot. And it's actually kind of a more reliable, more sustainable level. It doesn't ever overpromise, basically, that it's going to stay this way. And so I liked that idea, and maybe even having an arranged marriage being the core part of the movie, that the super rich couple getting married is an arranged marriage. And then the chemistry between our two leads is more of the hot, because the guy's the fireworks guy. Anyway, so we're just playing with those things, and we're just kind of batting those ideas around. We're like, that's more true to the nature of love than it just being this kind of hot, explosive thing all the time. And we missed the chance to say something more realistic and more naturalistic with this comedy that I regret.
Hey, that's why we have this. Maybe we'll take another swing at it at some point. But after we realized, we're like, oh, like fireworks is the like hot instant explosion, and then the plant is like a long nurturing thing.
Yes,
and we were like, we totally missed that. So hey, if that sounds interesting, go listen. It's actually a lot of fun. There's a lot of weird hijinks that get on that movie if you've not seen it. So I would recommend checking it out.
If you like romantic comedies, especially, they're a pretty well-known genre, even amongst like non-moviegoer people. They identify the
I feel like
tropes.
That one's the most romantic comedy that we've done. I think like we've done romance, like there's like love interests, but that one felt like more. Like
that was
classic
the plot.
Romantic
That was like
comedy.
The whole point. Was them ending up together. So kaboom! Go listen to it, folks. Go listen to our first guest star episode with Jonathan Laura, good buddy of ours.
Yep. Well, we're not going to tell a love story today, or maybe we will, but like that's not the surface level of what we're going to do.
See.
I'm bringing a scrap to the table, Zach.
Oh, okay. Bring some leftovers, man. Reheat. Pop that baby in the microwave.
Reheat. This is a recent idea that I've had, this visual that I've had. And I don't know if it's better to just explain the concept to you or to kind of give you like a rough monologue from a character inside the world.
Yeah. I'll let you decide.
Because, well, I'll take a spin. I've got a very cobbled together monologue that's a little rough, but that's the point. This is a scrap. Then I will go into a little bit more details.
Cool.
Afterwards. So this is a monologue from a character that's living in this world. The Wanderers touched down 15 years ago. I was only 10 at the time. Those giant behemoths came from the sky. Everyone thought it was the end of the world, but it was a little more boring than that. While they stood 20 to 30 stories tall, sometimes they just kind of wandered around the Midwest open spaces. There's some sort of biomechanical hybrid, kind of like a steampunky submarine with arms and legs. The government got involved, but they realized they didn't really do much. They just kind of ignored people and kept to their own. It almost seems like they're afraid of humans. I remember back in high school being dared to ride my bike and chuck rocks at it until it ran away. The whole world kind of fell used to them and didn't think much of them. And they just are in the background. I can see 3 beyond the haze from my house in my little town. But this morning something changed. I heard a blood-curdling noise and what felt like an earthquake. And when I went out to my porch, all 3 of them are beelining it to our small town. And the whole premise of this thing is we're dealing with some big monsters again.
We like it. We like
big monsters. I picture this like hybrid, like I said, steampunk. Like they don't necessarily have faces; they're just kind of like machines, but like with biology too. Gigantic, but they like literally. I just love this image of like you're out in the Midwest, just completely flat land. Just this little farm town like Courage the Cowardly Dog, and this guy is like drinking his coffee and he looks in like miles and miles out, like where it's hazy. There's just this gigantic like thing just like kind of waddling around just the open fields, open plains. And it's been 15 years. Like they don't do anything. Like they kind of steer clear of humans. No one knows why they're there. And it's one of those things that is like, oh, they've been here for so long. Like everyone's kind of lost interest. No one really thinks about them anymore. But then until now, it's been 15 years and something's changed. Like the iron giant bolt came out of his head and he starts to like, but that's where we could explore. I'm also open to change major things in this story, but I like this idea of this like crazy thing that everyone's gotten used to. And now it's like red alert because it's not acting the way that it's always acted before.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it should have been here longer than 15 years. I think a whole, 50 years. It's like just
Okay.
after the war, World War II, you know, we're looking 70 years at this point, but just long enough to where it's like nobody thinks about them. Like they got
That's
studied
fine.
and studied, and there's whole degrees that you can get based on these wanderers. But I mean, they might farm them for something at this point. You know, they might use them for some sort of milk. I don't know. I do like that they are, they're like Attack on Titan a little bit. Those big things,
Mhm.
where they have, um, they're like biomechanical in nature, it's kind of pumping
Mhm.
out steam, even though everything looks organic. Like I imagine them
Mhm.
actually looking like skin and having like steam come out of them anyway. I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. I kind of picture Regirock, the Pokemon,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
something like that, or Registeel, like one of those, like but giant, something kind of like that, but
That's
less
cool.
polished.
Yeah, so it
Um,
literally is like almost geometric in
yeah,
its
something like
form.
that. But I'm fully down for this to be like near a century of time. Like I think for my monologue delivery, it helps if it's like one person who's been around that
Oh
long.
yeah.
But I think it makes way more sense if it's just so normal. Like this
Mhm.
was before then to like around the time of the Industrial Revolution. It's like, yeah, they've been around. I like the idea that like they're all over the world, but they're only in like very open spaces. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're in spaces that they don't bother anything. Like they're really out there. And if people like come up to them, like they don't move fast, but they like will
Yeah.
purposely like move away. Like if like a single human like came up to it, it tries to like slowly walk away
I
from it.
think you could easily open up this movie with like historical documentary kind of District 9
Mm-hmm.
mockumentary with all you see them showing up in black and white footage. It's like my grandpa told me that they showed up like this when he was a boy, and that it really freaked everybody out, and maybe it even spawned like cults that were really into
Mm-hmm.
them, which I think is kind of interesting, as well as like, hey, even the religious like fundamentalists like had a big issue with them. They thought they were the devil. Turns out they were just like cows, and they just kind of like wander around. And even nowadays, they have refined it to where you actually can drink their milk, even though they don't like reproduce or whatever. I don't know, something to that degree where it's like they learned how to farm certain bacteria off of them and it actually grows at an exponential rate and blah, 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 blah. Trying to find
Yeah,
something. It's not,
I
it
think
doesn't need to be
there.
like reproductive in nature.
Yeah, like that's just how humanity would work. They would find
Yes.
something
Yes.
useful
They're
out
going to
of
farm
them.
it. Yeah. They're going to
I
domesticate it.
yeah, I do wonder if it's like did if they first arrived like the government trying to kill one. And I don't know if it would like work or if they were unsuccessful. They're like, we shot it with like every tank we had and like it didn't like it like wobbled, but it just never went down.
That's the scariest thing about them
And
is
they're
that they've never been able to kill one.
yeah, and like maybe there's like later on they're like we thought about nuking one, but it's like they're not doing anything, and we don't
Yeah.
want to like destroy the
It'd be
land.
easier to just like take them out to the middle of the ocean and put them on an island, which maybe that's what people did. Is like most of them
Mm,
have actually been rounded up and put in like one location, because they just were
yeah.
like, okay, we don't know what they are, and we're gonna
Well,
study them.
mhm. I could see that if they found something useful about like their skin or something or their milk or whatever, that could be a motivator to not collect them. Like it's like, hey, we want to keep these guys. Maybe they're like they created a source of energy, like
Sure.
their skin, like they can take flakes off of it, and it's like super efficient energy. And then because of that, they're like, well, we don't want them all in one, but like let's put them like where people can harvest it. Like
Yeah,
it's like a job at that point where
that's cool.
I
Yeah,
think that's kind of cool. Like these construction guys like go out and they have to, and clearly like the behemoths. I don't know if we want to keep calling them wanderers or something else, but like you have to kind of like catch up to them. You have to
Mhm.
like because they're gonna walk away from you, so you have to like get on them and then start climbing, and then like maybe amateur rock climbers like started
Yeah,
doing it,
yeah,
and then more and more people do it.
yeah. I mean, they'd be like a
Um,
combination of a rock climber and a cowboy getting out there and like roping
yeah.
them up. I imagine I could see this really vividly of like cell phone footage of one of them, like saying they usually stick to like pretty flat lands, but sometimes they
Hmm.
wander a little bit too far. And you see one that
Hmm.
is like up on some rocks and it falls off a cliff. And it just, have you ever seen
Hmm.
those like goats and stuff that fall off of cliffs? or seals.
I've seen the ones that climb.
Where it just like falls
the
and then
ones
it
seals.
rolls and rolls and rolls, and it's like totally dead. Like it's hit the thing so many times. But there's like one cliff that they all fall off of, out in California, I think. But it would be like that, where there's like this big massive blubber kind of just boom, boom, and then it just hits the ground and kind of like stands up on its feet. I'm actually thinking of one of the main bad guys from Pikmin. I don't know if you've ever played Pikmin, but the Bulborb. Yeah, they're like
I'm gonna pull it up because
it's the word bulb and then orb combined. And you've seen them before. They have the eyes and they just look like kind of like a raindrop shape.
Okay, yeah, I've seen
yours wouldn't have eyes. Like it wouldn't make it like that. I don't even think it would have a mouth necessarily, but just those two legs. And I imagine them being pretty hairy too. Like human hair, not like fur. And I think that's kind of off-putting where it has, different types of hair, some curly hair.
I did also like search an image of Regirock, and this is almost exactly like I'm like, something in this realm. But like, I'm also fine if we wanted to give them. I like them not having faces because that kind of takes away.
Of course,
like they're kind of this empty slate. But they're massive. Like they're really like they're near indestructible. They're massive. They're big. But yeah, I think Regirock, man.
I was more of a Regi Ice guy myself.
Really?
Yeah.
When I played the side note, when I played the Pokemon games, I only caught 2 of them because I forgot to save before I went and fought the other one. And I had like been playing for like hours, and I was like, oh, it's so dumb. And I killed it.
No, I am currently playing through Pokemon right now, and I'll make it a point to catch it just for you. Don't worry.
Make sure you save. I remember those Pokemon. This is a big sidestep. To get to the 3 Regi Pokemon, like you had to do like crazy stuff in the game. It was like really like full on video game. It's like you have to have this Pokemon and it has to be in this order, and you have to go to this place and you have to hit left, right, up, and then it's like
I feel like
it was so cool.
It was very cool, but that was like the peak non-internet. Although I know the internet was around, but like peak non-internet like gameplay where someone's like, we know that they're gonna buy this game manual and we're gonna make them pay for it. They're gonna get it and be like, I have to do this much stuff. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, so yeah, they farm them. I like the fact that some of them are on an island. Maybe most of them, but then got the more rancher type guys have grabbed some, and corporations and whatnot. And maybe our main character works in a factory where they just bring them in like cattle, and then they do like their scrapings and they scrape their skin. I like the idea that since no one has ever died, like there's no record of any of these wanderers ever dying, that they use their skin. Like you can cut it, but it heals back up. And so the medical industry uses them.
Like I imagine, like whatever they flake off their skin, this like material they flake off their skin, like it doesn't seem to hurt them. They kind of seem impervious, like they don't feel anything. So it's like, yeah, they could just do this. It'd be cool if they built like these big towers that are like U-shaped, and like the ranchers like herd them, like kind of corral them, like to walk through that thing, and then like the people like scrape them as they are.
Or it just literally has like a big brush underneath the side of it that just is designed. Like it's like a tunnel, and they go through it, and it's just like, and then the guy goes in there and cleans those off. And he's just like, okay, he's got to clean all the big bristles or whatever. And yeah, I think that is interesting. So yeah, what do we get into here with, what are they wanting to kill people?
So there's a couple options. So we're like in modern day at this point, these guys have been established for a near century. There's like whole economies built on these things. We're in some sort of like outside of Denver, like flatland areas. Like, when you're like, if you're ever flying into Denver, you can look out the window, you see the tiny little farms that are just like isolated little houses, and then just nothing but land around them.
Yeah.
I feel like that's our home base.
Okay.
Because I picture we have like a young guy who's a rancher or something, works on the farm. Maybe he like works with these things. And I love the image of him on his porch and like, like something miles away, but it's still so tall. That he can just see them. He can see them. He can see maybe like several, like they're at different lengths away. And I think I don't really have the answer to what happens, and I also don't know what's more interesting if they start running when they've always moved slow, or if they all just kind of converge like this. Like they notice, like people slowly notice it's like they're all heading the same place, and they've never all headed the same place. Like they're all like walking towards like the biggest city within sight or something, or town, and I just like this idea of like this slow burn of like over a century, no one cares anymore. They're like, oh, these are basically cows that we're using to harvest.
Yeah.
And then it's the slow burn that after a century, something's happening and now they're dangerous and people are unprepared for them to be dangerous.
We have these wanderers. They've been around. I think the interesting thing about that is reminds me of a Terry Pratchett short story somewhere in there in my head, or maybe part of a book from Discworld where he's talking, he's got trees and the trees have conversations over centuries. Like they say one word to each other.
That's kind of cool.
You know, over years and years and years. And it's like one sentence takes hundreds of years to say. I think that's cool. Just funny. And then there's another story about like fruit flies and how they live like entire lives. And the older generation is always like, these kids will never get it. When in my day, it was different. When it was like yesterday. Anyway, that it reminds me of that a little bit, where it's like the patient, they're just an extremely patient alien force that obviously is impervious to anything that we have, and we haven't developed any way to kill them. And maybe that's something that the government has continued to try to do. That could be kind of interesting. Like they've kept one in captivity, or several, I guess, and just tried to find ways to kill it. Because they would.
No, I think that
like Batman. They're like, any day that they want to turn on us, we want to be able to respond.
Yeah. I think that I'm trying to figure out what the bigger story is. Like, what if it's just them, like they're just a very slow race. So like they were going to take over from the beginning, but then they didn't start until now. It took them like 100 years to basically start. Which I think is kind of cool. There's a few things that I'm kind of drawing inspiration from, that are from various random sources. There is a Love, Death, and Robots short, which I cannot fully recommend to Love, Death, and Robots. It's got some pretty crazy stuff in there.
Yeah, so I've watched
it your own risk, but I saw that.
Yeah, I know.
But I got the outline of this one. And it's called The Giant, and it's basically like a giant man, like a 90-foot man washes up on shore.
Oh,
and like
yes.
the news goes crazy about it. But then like a few weeks go by and like no one cares that this giant man is there. And it's like the story of like this one dude who's like, why does no one care about this? This is like a big deal. So I think that's interesting. Just like the idea of like something becoming mundane, something fantastical becoming mundane because everyone's just used to it.
It's very, very.
The other thing is this is more
in terms of like exploring the mundane of the magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's an Invader Zim episode called "Walk for Your Lives." I don't know if you ever watched Invader Zim.
Barely. Always gave me.
It was. It was. I don't know. It's surprising that show got the green light to be on TV for a kid show. But there was an episode where there was like an explosion went off, but because of some sort of experiment, it was moving in incredibly slow motion. So it's like it's like expanding through the city and growing and growing, and then everyone's like, everyone, we're evacuating. Well, I guess you can take your time. And like no one's like really caring. They're all slowly taking their time. And then I think the experiment goes off and it goes back to normal speed and just destroys the entire city.
It really does speak to that humans only respond to the urgent. You know, if you say like something's going to happen in 100 years, okay, who cares?
Yeah, the tyranny of the urgent, man. It's real. So I think we need to flesh out. This is definitely a world building episode because we're building a history that is what fuels. Well, I think if we
zeroed in on a character that you like in this world, if you like that kind of cowboy factory worker guy, then we just start there because that'll give us a good theme the character will ground us in the world and say like, okay, we have to choose a direction.
Yeah.
But if you want to just flesh it out a little bit more, we can.
Yeah, I like this idea of this young rancher guy. I feel like we could establish if we want a love interest, then there could be like some woman who works at the collection facility or something, that he kind of is semi friends with, but he kind of is interested in. But she like lives in the city and he lives out on his farm. And maybe that's the motivating factor, that he's trying to get to the city when he realizes these things are heading towards the city.
Okay.
So he's like,
save her.
Yeah, to save her or to help out or something. I don't know what the grander thing, I think we'll get to it, of like what's drawing them, or if it's literally just like, hey, they're just attacking now.
I have an idea.
Okay. I want to hear it.
Really, have you seen Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind? We talked about it the other day off mic.
I don't think so.
It's my favorite.
Is that Ghibli
film. Yeah. It's his first. Nice. And it's just solid, man. It's solid. The lore is good. He's got the female protagonist like he usually does, some cool world building stuff, got these giant bug things. But this one lady who's the bad guy, she's like very militaristic. It's kind of the Miyazaki thing, is that man is bad for how he treats nature, essentially. But there are these giant warrior gods that humanity used to have, that have gone completely extinct. And so they find a mummified one and they rebuild it. But it can only last for like 20 minutes. It's melting. And they're using it to fight the bug army. And it just is like climbing over this ridge and it's melting. It's this huge thing. It's like the 90-foot man thing you're talking about. But he's like melting the whole time. It looks kind of like muck, and he just opens his mouth. He's got all these kind of spindly teeth, and he opens his mouth and this tiny little laser comes out. It's just, and then it just like atomic blast. I think that would be a really cool thing that these things could do, is that they shoot the most unassuming laser, and it's like a focused beam. Or I don't know. I just think that's kind of you put that type of destructive force within a really mundane looking thing. It's kind of play with our theme here, that like the mundane is dangerous, or to kind of fall asleep a little bit on something and not be diligent is bad, obviously. I don't know. It could be whatever. I mean, it could be poison gas that they emit. It can be.
Yeah, I'm looking at this big old. I searched Miyazaki giant war god, and I think I'm looking at it. It looks wild, man. It's very
like
Attack on Titan-y. Yeah, it's like a slimy orange thing.
Yeah.
I like that. I also like the idea of some sort of laser, because it'd be cool. Originally, I thought, oh, maybe they're running, and that's what's scary. But maybe they stay slow, but then they just like. That's the thing. They're like slow. They're always slow, but then they can just like blast a beam from like forever away, and then
I actually
blast
thought that
a city.
There are. This gets into a little bit of a trippier thing. Feels like it might be better suited for a book, but it turns out. Have you ever played like Metal Gear Solid?
I've not, no, but
I've only had friends who are really into it, so I've never played it more than just like at somebody's house. But the Metal Gears are the big like mechs. It's kind of an AT-AT from Star Wars, the two-legged things that walk around. At least any Metal Gear heads out there, correct me, obviously. But imagine if there was one of those things inside of each of them. Except the only way that these aliens could get into our world is if they covered themselves in flesh. And so they built these suits and they just walk around and they're just observing and whatnot, but they're virtually indestructible. But then when the time comes, they like have seizures and shake and then start to melt. And what comes out of them are these like bony alien things.
That's interesting. So it's like, not that they're soft and fluffy before, but they're these big, slow things that no one cares about. And then like these like there's aliens within them. Yeah. There's a nasty alien within these things when they melt away.
Yeah. And then they become a big threat. But it was just that it took that long to basically acclimate, kind of like a beta fish. You buy it, you got to put it in the water. If they had come into our dimension, you think like War of the Worlds, they got killed by germs. That it's essentially that thing where they're just like, it took them 50, 60, 70 years using these biotech machines to actually be able to acclimate their own bodies. So then their own bodies come out of these things. So they all get kind of born. And I like the idea that they're bone. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, like some more slender bone monster things that are a bit faster.
Oh yeah.
I think that's cool. I'm going to throw an idea out that could be a plot point later. And we can see. I like the idea of the one that like fell down the mountain. Like, just like rolled down. In the panic, like people go and they're running and they're hiding because it's basically post-apocalyptic at this point. The government's getting involved. They're trying to defend the cities. But maybe our protagonists find like that dumb one that fell down the mountain, and it's the only one still in its like rock form or its like big form. And then they're like, what? And maybe they like try to figure out, they're like, can we capitalize on this thing to help? Kind of like what you were saying in the other story, like they have their one giant to somehow like fight the other giants. Like maybe that one has amnesia or something because it fell down the mountain or something. I don't know.
You'd have to answer it somehow, or this is one that they put a machine in and were able to take it over. You know, they were able to actually like implant something into it that takes it over. Either that, or you'd have to find a way to understand that it was one that didn't agree with the rest. And you could do something like that where they try to communicate with it, and it's like basically like Iron Gianting. Like, it's like gesturing and stuff that it doesn't want to do that. I really imagine just a big ball with feet, basically, like just a big ball of flesh, but with like big kind of hoofy feet. So it's weird for me to think like, oh, it's somehow gesturing.
Oh yeah,
I think
that's true.
Communicate telepathically. They go to X-ray them and they can't see anything. That really makes the government wary. Again, but if it made them that wary, then they would just round them up. So they'd have to like X-ray them and not see anything, which is maybe
maybe they just see bone. They just see the skeleton, like a weird skeleton inside of it, and they don't think of anything. And then the skeleton is like a different organism.
And then it like slowly reconstitutes because it looks like one thing, you know, when they first arrived, but then it's like slowly reconstitutes it. But the outside of it doesn't really change because it's basically a cocoon that these things are walking cocoons, and then they bust out, and they're these. Do we want them? I guess they're giant. Is the scary thing? Like you're saying, there's some that are like 20, 30 stories tall, which is 200 something feet tall, right? Like that's huge.
They gotta be huge, man.
They gotta be. They're huge. Kaiju. They're these big bone kaiju, which is very Attack on Titan, but we can make them look not humanoid. Although I do like the idea that they like get one open and they kind of like Independence Day, they like rip it open and it's like a big skull thing inside. Just like, ooh, that's scary.
Yeah. It'd be cool if the things are like, maybe they're long, they're like dragon like, you know, like a Chinese dragon.
Yeah.
And it's like when they x-rayed them, they're like, this skeleton doesn't make any sense. It's just like a big spiral.
Yeah.
And it's because it's like it unravels from the ball and then it's just a super long giant bone creature.
This is very trippy.
Yeah, it's very Miyazaki. This might definitely be a world building episode where we don't have full plot, but we have a really cool
I think
world to
explore. If you kind of zero back in on our cowboy guy, we can go from there. There's something to be said about, again, assessing your threats. What is the phrase? The phrase goes something like, I'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So there's like people that are like that, where like, I don't trust the wanderers at all. Like they are up to something. And so you get, and then there are people who are like, oh, we have an amusement park where you can ride them, you know, just completely not taking it seriously. Not that anyone would own them because they're so big, but it's just, come check out this oddity. And like, how did they get here? Did they land in a spaceship? Did they come through a portal? I think that helps also kind of set a little bit of the table in terms of like people's expectations for them.
Yeah, no, it's, I think what I pictured is like, they kind of like descended a little bit, like they're like meteors coming down, but then as they got closer, they slowed down until they like had a gentle land.
Or they just like unfolded out of a, that's kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a, foreshadowing for like this hard, crusty rock to land. And then out of that comes these fleshy things. Well, then inside of that is a hard, rocky thing. But I do think a portal kind of makes sense just in terms of, again, the beta fish metaphor, where it's like, okay, they made these biosuits to be able to survive getting acclimated. And so they would have had to come like pretty immediately. Or maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, they could.
No,
have
I'm fine with a portal. Just these like flashes of purple or something, and these big fleshy things are all over the wide landscapes all over the world.
Yeah, exactly. They just split a rift in space basically and walked through it, and then their planet is completely different. But they want to take over. They want to take over for sure. They want to turn our planet into theirs. Although why spend 70 years acclimating themselves to our planet if they were going to try and terraform it? I guess to bring other people in, like bring their other race, the rest of their race in. Man, I hate aliens.
Why?
Go back to your planet. They always want our planet. Our planet's perfect.
It would be funny if there was an alien movie where they show up and they look around and they're like, this place sucks. And there they go back.
Yeah, I got stuck. I got stranded on Earth. Really? Oh.
You hear them. They're like, yeah, it's great. It's great. And then they pull up their alien phone. They're like, yeah, we're not going to want this place.
Yeah.
You don't want this place.
Yeah. Keep looking. They've ruined it.
This place is terrible. Sweet. Let's experiment. I don't think we're going to get super crazy deep in plot, but who knows? Maybe we will. I want us to start at immediate res. We are here. We are at this point where these skeletons are coming out of the wanderers.
Okay. I imagine they stop. They seize up. They literally are like shaking a whole bunch and maybe make a noise. That's how you know something's about to go down.
I think because there's only it's not like they're all over the place, but they are big. So I imagine if there were 3 within sight, they all explode. The skeletons go attack the nearest big city, and everyone else can just see this playing out. So then there's a lot of panic and a lot of going back to kind of megalophilia. I like the idea of it's there's panic and there's worry, but there's only the threat's only in centralized areas because there's only so many. It's at the biggest city. Yeah. And then this rancher, and maybe we can make the rancher female instead. That could be a fun, interesting, and then give her some motivation. Because just very, very broad strokes things that we could do is there's a love interest and it's trying to go save the love interest. There's a family member trying to go save the family member. We could tie in this one remaining fleshy guy that is never turned into a skeleton. But if they're just trying to take over and it's just been a slow wait, what is the next step for humanity?
I think you could play with a plot where they take over a whole zone and they're starting to do something in the zone. They're starting to nest build or whatever it is. And they take over whole cities and are making them into these giant craters or underground tunnel systems, that kind of thing. And somebody is stuck in one of these zones, and our cowboy, our cowgirl has to go in and sneak past the military to get in. It's not a worldwide thing, but it's enough of a threat where they're like, okay, well, I have to sneak my way in if I want to save them. The government pretty much has their hand on the nuke, and it's we don't know what they're going to do, and we don't really care. We want to destroy them. I think that's kind of the way to go.
Yeah, I think we have all this history, this documentary stuff. We come to the present, maybe, where there's still the big fleshy boys just wandering around, and we kind of get it to see some of our characters at that point. And then I think that it all breaks bad, skeletons come out, and then we have a time jump that's maybe a few years in the future. And then that's where our story takes place, because then we have this kind of resistance versus the skeletons, and there's territories, and there's, I feel
I'm not a big fan of time jumps, to be honest. It goes back to our first thing about urgency. Yeah. That it's the opposite of urgency. That you'd want to be able to, you do all this setup just to then jump away from the problem.
That's true.
There would be stories that could be told in that. I think it'd be better just to pick up with the skeleton monsters, and then you kind of just hit the fact they got here just really slowly. And the documentary ends with them turning into, the bone thing.
The skeletons. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that
that's
would be
true.
the way that I would stitch together, where it's like the prologue. It's not really a time jump. It's just like that was then, and then when now we're starting, the story starts now.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if we want to establish like some sort of like I don't think we can either have the story where it's panic and a few individuals trying to find their way, or it's like a more time has passed and there's like a air quote resistance that is
Yeah.
because I think that needs a little time to like have legs because it's like almost like an artificial government that needs to be established.
Oh yeah.
And I think that needs a few years. So which is more interesting to you? Like the
former is more interesting to me, but also just because we don't have their why figured out. We don't have the why of the bone guys. Like, are they just trying to take over the world? Like, what are the humans resisting? You know, if they only take over a certain zone, would the humans who, aren't in that zone, they're not oppressed at all. They wouldn't need to necessarily form a different government. If I'm like within them, can the bone guys actually communicate at that point? Are they using humans for something, or is it just like killing them on sight? Are they that sentient?
Maybe
what do they do when you meet one? Do they just kill you up like on site?
Yeah, I don't know if the bone guys could surround a city. Maybe they don't just like start destroying stuff, because I could see a world where everyone got used to the big round guys and then they became the bone guys, and there was like this panic, and then like these guys like slither or whatever and surround like a city in its entirety. Like they kind of like sealed off a city, but then they're just like kind of lying in wait, and where they're not necessarily taking action. Like humanity is kind of waking up. It's like these guys move slow, but we don't want to wait until they make their next move, because clearly they have something going on. Like they're making.
Like you could do that once with these things. You couldn't necessarily get away with it doing it twice. Like after 70 years, after 70 years they do something and then they stop.
No, then we time jump 70 more years.
That's what I thought. No, I think you pull in some weird kind of other kind of almost demonic element into it. I think would be kind of interesting that these giants, I guess we're getting into Nephilim territory, but and I thought that they would be angels to begin with, just because that's kind of weird and cool. But the big guys, I never played the game. This is like an episode of like games that I never played. But the Zelda game, the Majora's Mask, with the giants that kind of push the moon back.
Yeah, I remember that. I only know that from
the Smash level,
the Smash Brothers. Super Smash Brothers, where they catch the moon and then they throw it back.
So for all those Zelda heads listening, go easy on us. I think something like that could be kind of interesting, where they all get together and they're trying to get the moon to crash into the Earth. Like they, so they are trying to make the Earth uninhabitable, and what they were doing, again, they were just getting acclimated. And then they get together and they can chant, and they just are like, oh, wah, 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 wah. They make it's. You remember Atlantis? I'm pulling in a lot of references here. The big like stone guys that protected Atlantis. These are big bone guys that kind of look like that, but they're projecting like a force field / gravitational pull, and they're pulling the moon in, because maybe the moon is actually an egg. I'm going hardcore now. Maybe the moon is actually an egg and they're trying to pull it in. You know what I mean, man? Like the moon is an egg.
The moon is an egg, man.
That's the name of the movie. That's the name of the movie, actually. That's and the along the lines is the moon is an egg.
Some guy takes his sunglasses off and he's like, the moon is an egg.
Yeah, it's an ovum. Say it in English. It's an egg.
Man.
No, I don't know. I think that obviously that's like ridiculous. But I think giving them some sort of like priestly role at that point, like if this was their priest class that came first, and now they're bringing in the other types of aliens, like smaller maybe, and they're channeling a portal to open and let them in or whatever. Like it's an invasion that takes a really long time, and I think that's the slow scariness of it all.
Yeah, I think we need our cast of characters. I think we need one of these bone guys to not want to do this. And like, because otherwise I just don't know how our protagonists like solve this without some exposition from the bone guys. Like if there was one that was just like, I don't feel right about this, and like could communicate with them.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of lame. I want them to be bad. I just want them to be
like they're all bad.
Yeah.
Well, what are the humans
There's
going to
no
do?
Gizmo in this one. You know, they're all gremlins. They're all just bad gremlins. No, I think you just pick up on the weird factions that we talked about in the beginning that have formed over that 70 years, where the people who like didn't ever give up being diligent about it. And so you have these kind of preppers that feel justified now. And then you have the normie people who are having to kind of lean on the preppers a little bit. And yeah, maybe together or like separately. I like the idea that they're more humanoid than they are like serpentine, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Because when they can
that's fine.
stand up and they like put their hands together and they shoot out a big laser. I think that's kind of cool. And they can look bony and gross. Like they don't need to look human, but they have like 2 arms and 2 legs. And
yeah, I feel like maybe like they're still lurching or something. Like they have a huge back
Huge
and they're lurching, and like
hunchback.
one like big eye or something, one big like glowing thing, and then like but they're faster than they would be.
Oh, of course, yeah.
In the other thing.
Yeah, and they can use their laser and everything, and they come together and they use their lasers. They shoot it into the sky, and it like comes together, and that's what causes the what you call it. But maybe in this form they can be killed. The cocoon form, they weren't able to be killed, but in this form they, you know, if you really try.
Someone like gets a well placed shot with a tank and can just like blast it.
Or that one comic I sent you. You remember that on Instagram? The whole thing where the guys with the flamethrowers and they got to just sit there and keep burning it.
Yeah, do you want to explain for our audience what this comic was? Because it was a funny comic, but it also was like a really cool story idea too.
Yeah, so it's just like a little GIF basically of this guy in a hazmat suit with a flamethrower, and it's I wish I could give credit to whoever it was, but if you know who it is, you know, send it to us, or maybe we can find it before we post and put it in the captions.
Yep, you can check the show notes. It might be down there if we can find it.
They're like, Dengar the Undying, giant, you know, catastrophic Nephilim thing. You know, the only way to keep him in check is to just continually burn him, like burn all of the flesh off of his body. So it's just a skeleton that grows back just enough flesh, and then these guys just braise it with the flamethrower, and that's their whole job, is just guys 24/7 just burning it. I think that's kind of cool, where it's like they can't really be killed, but they can be that gets more into the mundane thing of like this magical whatever, but you got these guys that are around the clock having to burn it. That would get boring after a while. And probably stink, but I smell like Dengar the Undying. you just have his stink all over you. But I think you pick up on these factions, and we pick a character. We could do a boy and a girl, but you're kind of, we could do a little bit of a road trip movie where we're not explaining it, kind of like Cloverfield a little bit, where there's a larger kind of militaristic plot happening that we're not really in tune with, but we know the military is going to do something, or that they are planning something. But the military, I guess, would be the biggest non-prepper. Like you would.
Oh yeah, because they've been utilizing these things.
Yeah, they would be preppers. Yeah, exactly. So then you would think if they just did it, they'd be like, well, we never found out a way. And maybe that's the thing, is that the Bone guys just end up decimating the military and the government pretty early on. And so all that's left are these smaller factions. And maybe this is the ranchers are like, hey, we noticed that they don't like XYZ thing. Yeah, like maybe a certain type of cactus that they don't like. And it's just the super rare, you know, whatever. And nobody's able to like channel it to make anything. It just keeps them away. But in their bone form, maybe they wouldn't be as adverse to it.
Dude, I am a sucker for a story with like some sort of powerful, dangerous entity that is kept away by some magic rule, you know? Like some sort of distinct thing that makes them not able to attack or something.
Yeah, like Predator, he covers himself in the mud. Arnold Schwarzenegger does that, and it's like, that's cool. You know, there's something to keep very specific things at bay. So if you think about bone, if that's what they are, and they're like an alien bone, so we could just make up something. It could be a type of metal.
I'm gonna ask Google, what is the opposite of bone?
I mean, inorganic would be what it is. Inorganic and unstructured, but everything has a molecular structure. So I don't know.
Guys, if you remove all your bones from your body, they can't fight you.
Yeah. I do think that they eat humans too. You know, like they need to eat, and might as well eat. humans and all sorts of other things. But I do think crashing the moon into Earth is a pretty scary thing.
Yeah, like they're all converging. Like maybe they attack the cities and stuff, but then they're all like slowly. It's, again, they're not like the fastest things. They're all like meeting. Like all of the ones all over the place are like meeting. Maybe that's what they've been looking for, like the central place, the gravitational pull, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, this is where and like somehow they can like communicate across great distances, and they're all trying to get to one place to pull the moon down.
We were going underwater. And they're just walking at the bottom of the ocean, fighting giant squids. It's kind of cool.
Fighting. It's just like a side story where there's just like some other monster that they just run into.
Well, yeah, go squid at that point. Go squid.
Go squid. And then everyone's like, we have to use the squid.
Yeah, squids are our only hope. I think... what would they need to do? Humans, I think they would develop some sort of acid that could hurt them. Something that would dissolve whatever it is. I think that could be kind of cool. But why do they want to crash the moon into Earth? It's not an egg, like we were saying. I think that's kind of dumb.
Could be an egg.
Could be an egg, but I think it's dumb to be like, hey, I'm going to crack an egg.
Right onto Earth.
Right onto Earth. I mean, if it was a hive of their own kind, that would make sense. Like they live in the moon. So it isn't technically an egg, but it's just more of like, hey, we're going to bring our planet here. Why did it take them that long to do it? Again, the acclimation thing. But I feel like that has to come back into play. Like we've set that up. And
it's the moon's a mega structure, just like in the movie Moonfall.
Yeah.
And it's filled with their eggs.
The eggs. It's not an egg, it's eggs.
It's eggs. The guy takes off his sunglasses like, it's eggs.
Yeah. It's like, when you want to make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs.
You got to crack a few eggs, man. I'm trying to figure out how to tie the moon thing. So a few things that I'm struggling with.
I have an idea, but
you got to, okay.
You want to hear it?
Give it. Yeah.
Okay.
Give it to me.
That the moon thing is actually that's just one of their powers. It's just this gravitational kind of thing. And only when they get together and can do their chant, and it has this like quasi-religious thing to it, which I think is kind of cool. But yeah, they have to get to a certain point on Earth to do it, at the equator, maybe, I don't know. And maybe we're in South America. Who knows? That's kind of cool. And the whole thing with the moon, though, is that they actually put something at the center of the Earth when they showed up. And they're going to use the moon to like bust open Earth and get it out now.
The Earth is the egg.
The Earth is the egg, dude. That's right.
As long as there's an egg, I'm on board, man.
Me too, dude. Me too. So yeah, Earth is the egg. I'm down with that. And these things really like egg cocoon things. So
yeah, they basically like bake for a long time, and then they crack open, and that's their whole deal. That's their whole spiel of what they do.
And maybe that's the whole thing is like, these things aren't the alien. The alien has been underground this whole time. I think that you'd have to set that up separately. So maybe our female scientist is like a seismologist. This feels like Tremors a little bit, but and she's like studying, they're boring into the Earth or whatever, and they keep getting these weird signals, weird energy signatures, whatever it is. And it actually turns out that Earth has been impregnated with something.
Oh no.
I think that's kind of cool, actually. And
I think that is cool. It makes me think a little bit of Eternals. Did you ever see Eternals?
No, but it looked really bad.
It's not great, but I'm going to spoil a little bit, so I'll give everyone a chance to pause or skip forward if they're going to watch Eternals.
Just spoil it. You actually are probably doing them a favor.
Eternals is funny because I kind of like had a fun time watching it, but it's not like a great movie.
Tommy.
What?
Take it back. Take that back.
Oh, I take it back.
Well, that was easy.
If we're going to put but like the whole thing is like, they're like, what are the big Marvel things? You might know this. Like, what are the gigantic Marvel beings that like live in space and stuff?
Celestials?
Yeah, Celestials. Basically.
Celestials?
Yeah, Zach knows. I think that's what it is. But basically, it's like, Earth is like basically that. Like, it's gonna like grow, and then one day it will like blow up the Earth, and there will be a new celestial, and they have to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. It's like, oh yeah, we've always been here, and now our thing's getting close to hatching. And if we can like crack this planet open, then we'll have like our god, or our like whatever, like our big creature will come out, whatever you want to call it.
What I was going to say is that this is a little bit of it along the lines, but there's a scientist character that's like, these aren't the aliens. These are white blood cells. Like these are just cells acting on a body. And their whole thing is trying to get, like they're just hatchers, and they just, they hatch for one, but then two, they summon something to help hatch, and the thing is, the thing that the alien inside of Earth, the embryo, let's call it that, the embryon. Oh, it's a Pokemon, isn't it?
Embryon.
Umbreon. 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 An embryoid. An embryoid is inside of Earth. And it's been there forever. Like for a long time. Like we thought that these things. And that's where they didn't come from. This is the big, I think, third act reveal, or maybe second act reveal. They didn't come from somewhere else. They came from inside of Earth.
I like that.
That's cool. They've always been here.
They've always been here, like the long rage.
Yeah. It's true, actually.
Callback.
We like our incubators.
I like that a lot. I think that's interesting. I think so. Yeah, these things appear. Everyone thought they were alien. They've been around for near a century. That these things pop out, they fully baked, and now they are ready to like enact, and they're like acting as kind of like an immune system and all of this stuff, and like kind of cleaning house and going to this thing to prepare the earth to hatch, so to speak. And then people, I think we need to have like some people, like a semi-resistance that forms quickly. Maybe they're, like you say, there's like these Reddit groups that are like, these things are bad. I think these things are bad. I don't know about
Redditors being the ones, maybe a 4chan group. I don't know.
I don't know, but like some like preppers, basically, these like preppers that they're like, I knew it. And then there's like and people and scientists that have studied them, and on both sides that have studied them and not thought much, but they're like, okay, now that this is happening, we actually found stuff that we didn't really think much of, but now it makes sense. You have some of their weaknesses, or they really tend to stay away from these trees or something like that. Like they do not like these trees, which is only so helpful, because the team would have to go to the trees. Maybe that's what they do. Like they camp out in this forest. Yeah, maybe, because these skeletons won't go into the forest.
That's cool. I think two things to kind of recap. You recapped beautifully everything up until that point. I think we have two characters, a female who works at the boring facility that is like going into the tunnels, and she's picking up the bits of information about the embryoid. And then you have the rancher guy, the cowboy guy, who's really more of the hands-on, rough and tumble, I'm going to shoot him, Chris Pratt, Jurassic World type. And he's maybe works at a theme park with these things, or works at, like you said, the kind of scraping facility where they harvest certain whatever parts of it without killing it. And so then we can kind of put these two people together. These facilities aren't that far apart. Maybe we're in Colorado, Nevada, somewhere out where it's wherever, you can drill. And so the whole movie ends up being, we need to get down into the earth. So it's a little bit like the core. We're really mashing a lot of things together. But the plot wise would be that they need to come together and combine their knowledge to then kill the embryoid, or the ego from Guardians 2. But it's like, it's a non-thinking, or it thinks, but it's not like sentient, I think, or it's not like
it's just like instinct. It's just like like, it's not like thinking of us as a threat as much.
That
as
could be
it's
kind of
just
cool. Like at the end, they get down to some sort of way to communicate with the embryoid, and it is talking to them.
They're about to destroy it, and then they just hear, "Hey, don't."
hey guys. Hey.
I feel like, whoa. Don't do that.
Taika Waititi voice.
Yeah. Just like the
big dogs and dogs, cats and cats. Hey there, yes. How about no? And then they just But yeah, you could just like shoot something in to blow it up, but it would kill the planet too. I think is maybe the dilemma that it's like wrapped itself around the core, so it would kill the Earth alongside of whatever.
What's the solution to this story?
That's the dilemma. I'm just giving you the dilemma.
And some guy just has a bazooka and he's like, worth it, and he just shoots it and blood kills the Earth.
Not my problem. And he just shoots it. Yeah, I think that you could end it on that note. Like you could lead up to that kind of Twilight Zone ending where you're like, oh, that is an interesting dilemma where they kind of make the change necessary and not knowing the devil is better than the devil you don't know. I don't know what it would do. Would it destroy the atmosphere on Earth? It would collapse the air bubble basically that is Earth. And make it uninhabitable. And they're going to crash the moon into it anyway. So I guess you would rather be the one who does it than.
That's a very bleak ending because it's like, hey, they're going to crash the moon and kill Earth, or I kill the alien and kill Earth, because it's like, I don't know, at least the alien doesn't win or whatever the thing is inside the Earth. Yeah, I'm unsold on that ending, but it's also like, it's not. I don't know. But it also kind of works. I'm not sold on it, Yeah. It just is kind of it's a very seeking a friend at the end of the world, where the ending is sad. The ending is like, no, this is it. Maybe humanity's slowness to act.
Yeah, I feel
really
like
did us in.
We're at that point in the episode where it's like the Mythbusters we're just gonna make it work. Okay, we're just gonna make it work. We're gonna make the myth. We're gonna make it happen. That I would. Okay, so we have our Chris Pratt character. We have our, whoever the scientist lady is. We could throw in. There's several really great actresses out there. I think Florence Pugh had a moment. She's in Oppenheimer. She's in a bunch of things, Midsummer or whatever. That we could put her in as the scientist. I think that's kind of interesting. Make her nerdy and whatever. Less of a starlet looking role, make her more of the brain of the operation. We have the Chris Pratt type character. We'll just put Chris Pratt in this role. Why not?
Yeah. Put him in there.
He's voicing Mario and Garfield. And I feel like it's the same ploy for each of them. Mario I bought, but Garfield, I'm like, okay, man, like really, we don't need this, but we'll get you back in your live action kind of quasi Indiana Jones role here. And so he's running around, or maybe, what is it? Jake from New Girl. We'll get him buff and we'll make Jake from New Girl our rancher guy. I like that a lot.
Hold on, I gotta look up. I know the guys, but I'm trying to remember. I've not seen New Girl, so Jake from New Girl. I've had to look up so many images today.
I know. Again, this is probably the most referenced episode. Like we were just.
Okay. It's like that guy.
Yeah,
okay,
we get him shredded. We pump him full of tea, and we get him like on a trenbolone sandwich and just make him shredded. Impossibly buff, and. Then he's our rancher guy, but he's funny, and charming. So that helps us. We're using the Chris Pratt formula, but we're not doing Chris Pratt. Now they need to come together. I think they kill the skeleton guys at the 11th hour somehow, something that they've set up that he realized out on the ranch. It's like, oh, they don't like this type of cactus. He gets it to the secondary scientist character that Florence Pugh works with. He synthesizes some sort of, bullet, some kind of missile. A missile is probably better since they're giant. And they're able to shoot them basically, or blow it up. And there's like gas that comes out. And they realize that because they were studying maybe their skin sheaths that they left behind too. And it's like, oh, this is what they were trying to do. Like we could tell a little bit of the environment that they came from. So now we can kind of find out what they found poisonous about Earth and crank that up. And then they do that and they find out about the embryoid in the middle of the Earth through Florence Pugh's character. How do they beat that though? They beat the top surface level threat. They don't crash the moon anymore. And now we have the embryoid. I think if they maybe even like convince it that it's still in a gestation period, like they put it back to sleep. Basically.
That's cool. Yeah, I was going to say either that or they like make a strong-armed deal with it. Like if it's somewhat sentient, where it's like it needed the Earth to crack to get out, and then they stopped that. So if they were like, hey, you can stay here, but like we're not gonna let you destroy here. Like it's kind of like, oh, we could just
Oh, I thought
like
something
it's like we all die, or you can stay here, but you're gonna stay inside the earth.
simultaneously while everything has been happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the 70 years that they've been here, there have
Mm-hmm.
been a lot of other noted odd things. One of
Mm-hmm.
which is that there's like increased sleep issues that people have.
Mm.
And so our main character, Jake from New Girl, is one of these sufferers, and he takes one of these drugs that you see like a drug commercial for, that basically puts him to like in a chemical sleep. So he doesn't have nightmares because they always have these nightmares.
Mm-hmm.
And they come to find out that there are brain waves is basically what's happening. That the embryoid is like talking, and that's how the creatures talk. And they find that signal, and they're able to pump it back down into the embryoid and put it back to sleep. I think that's kind of cool. Where it's like we can't kill it, because
that kind of comes back to the regenerating monster bit we talked about earlier. Where
that's true.
There's no like final victory as much as they just have to keep it asleep.
Yeah, and I think that's actually kind of an interesting thematic loop that you're in, where we were asleep to them as being an issue, and they were kind of asleep, and so now it's this uneasy sleep that they're in, that humanity is in, that they've put it into an uneasy sleep as well. I think is kind of cool. And who dies? Does anybody die in all of this? I think Jake doesn't die. I think who did we cast? What is it?
I feel like it'd be some of the side characters. I kind of feel like the main couple make it, and then like some of the other side characters maybe.
Yeah, I think maybe the scientist girl would die. That she would figure out the brainwave thing. I don't know. There's something kind of interesting about that she ends up in a coma. Like they need to put her in a coma to be able to have like, they need to use a human host to send the certain brainwaves back through. And they're like, well, who's going to do it? And so that even though Jake and her fall in love, she's now in a coma. I think that's kind of interesting. There's your devastation. There's your Zach Lovelace gut punch, because he loves her and she's like, I have to do this. And they find out that only certain humans have the certain capability to give off these brainwaves. It's not like it's just any old, why don't you just find any old coma person? It's like, no, it's got to be like, you have to make it happen artificially. And so these two brains essentially are always talking, Florence Pugh's character. And that actually then sets a timer, because it's like, well, what about when does she die? She might just die. Do they just find another person to do it? You know,
that's interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, like I think, okay.
We're into some serious lore here, but you kind of get what I'm going for.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think that's interesting where like somehow this massive thing at the Earth's core can be matched with the brainwaves of like a single human. But I think I'll buy it. Like something keeps it at bay.
I think they have a machine that does it.
They have a machine, and then you got this kind of Doctor Strange-esque ending where it's a stalemate, like where it's like, hey, I've come to bargain, and the monster can't. Basically, the monster can't win. The monster's like stuck in limbo because of this person. Which I think is cool. And then as long as she's alive, like she could be in a coma, like I would imagine any world governments remaining would do anything to like keep her healthy while in this coma. But then the movie ends where it's like, we've kind of got one human lifetime. We kind of had 70 years of falling asleep, and we've got, I don't know, maybe another 40 years to figure this out. Because when she's gone, then the thing wakes up. And that's kind of a very like ominous, weird ending.
It is. Again, I like the stalemate thing, and the repeating kind of theme is levels of sedation, levels of gestation, levels of sleep, levels of like unconsciousness, I think is where we're just playing with that same kind of thing over and over again. And I think that's cool. Like that's how they beat it. They realize it's like sleep mechanism is the way to get it back to not active. And then they just need to contend with the bone guys, which I figured they could just muscle their way through them now that they're out of their impenetrable cocoons.
Yeah.
I was looking for something though. Because I have a title in mind. I have several titles.
I have several titles in mind as well.
Let's land the plane then. We're into title territory. We'll do a little bit of a recap. This was a note from Johnny after the fact. We'll give credit where credit is due. So in this story, we start with a mockumentary, and we see these creatures appear after flashes of light, and they are these big kind of bipedal giants, 20 story, 30 stories tall, maybe even some variations in size as well. And they are virtually indestructible walking around. Fast forward to today, the whole industries have emerged around them. The government is still wary, yada, yada. I mean, the yada, yada in your summary is probably not good, but whatever. At this stage, if you're listening to it, you get what we're going for. And we set up our two main characters. We have a female scientist who works in a facility where they dig underground. They study noises deep under the crust of the earth, basically, and they're starting to get different weird readings. At the same time, we're with a rancher guy who is on one of these industrial wanderer, if you'll call them these aliens, harvesting kind of ranches, and he's very wary of them as well. He's having nightmares. He takes medication to stop it from happening. It's been in his family ever since these things arrived, and then one day these things crack open, and out come these bony hunchback giants that can shoot lasers, and they come together and decimate certain cities and start doing their priestly chants to summon the moon. And NASA is very much like the moon is starting to shift in its orbit, and the ocean is going crazy because these things are calling the moon to Earth. So they realize they're going to try and crash it into Earth. At the same time, they're starting to connect the dots that this Florence Pugh scientist girl is starting to connect the dots, and through some various destruction and death, our two main characters meet, and they realize they're part of this mission with this small faction of the government left to try and destroy the embryoid, as we're calling it, at the center of the earth, the true alien that has actually pushed these wanderers to the surface and has now made the earth ready to be cracked open. So that is where we end our story, after they're able to stop them and they reach a certain level of a stalemate, like Tommy said, with the Florence Pugh character sacrificing herself with this machine, and is able to be in a suspended state of animation and consciousness to send a certain brainwave and keep both her and it asleep. But he fell in love with her, so it's a bittersweet ending. The end.
Good summary. Zach, I gotta give you kudos because there were a lot of points in this that I was like, I'm not exactly sure where to take it, but you put a lot of meat on these bones for this random idea. These bones,
no pun intended.
No pun intended. I've got some potential titles. I've got a rough line, so I don't know if I want to kind of piggyback back and forth and kind of figure out some stuff. Do you want to hit me with one of your titles? We can kind of go through some of the titles. I've got two that I feel like could be potential. Okay. I don't know how many you got.
I've got a couple as well. The number one in my mind though was gestation. Although that implies birth of some kind. I just thought since the bone guys are gestating for a long time, the embryoid is gestating for a long time. But that doesn't hit that kind of that stalemate that they reach at the end, that level of unconsciousness I know that there's some word that connects them, where they both are just in this coma, if you will. So that's what I have. What did you have?
One that I like, is They Woke, because it is like implying that the creatures woke.
Yeah.
Not woke in the sense of like society being formed, but like they have woken up. And then in the same time, when that happens, humanity wakes up as well. So They Woke is one, or like Awaken. It's interesting
because there's They Live is a alien movie where these aliens live amongst us. And the whole thing is, the phrase is, they live, we sleep.
That's interesting.
Because the whole thing is they have humanity under a spell where you can't see them. Pretty interesting stuff.
The other one I have that I wrote down was Hatchers. But that was before we kind of broached the like one in the middle of the earth, because it was like everything was hatching from like the big round guys.
Yeah. But I'm reading about different levels of sedation right now. I think that's probably a pretty interesting way to
Sedation's not bad either. Sedation, because it's kind of like,
that's
really
true.
Like the whole story is kind of about people not being aware, not being fully conscious.
I like that. There's a level called twilight sedation that is this level that like dentists put you under, where you can still take commands, but you're not fully conscious. Kind of an interesting idea. I realized what I was going to say. It wasn't levels of consciousness. It's levels of night. What is it? Let's see. There are different levels of night. Day and night, midnight sun, and then polar night. Polar night is like the furthest dark you can be, which is kind of interesting. And maybe the thing is at the pole.
Yeah, that could work, but I feel like it changes our setting a little bit. Like it takes us to the North Pole, and we've not said a single thing about the North Pole.
That's fair. We did say the equator, I guess.
Yeah,
but
let's just call it equator.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Why didn't I?
We'll call it the skeletons inside the things.
Ooh! I love that idea.
No, I think something like sedation, something with awake or woken or something sounds cool to me too. Hatchers, no, I don't want to do hatchers.
Yeah, hatchers
anymore.
again, the kind of the eggy thing. I think sedation is cool. Sedate. What is the Ramones song? I want to be sedated.
I want to be sedated.
Yeah.
Or what about just adding the to it, the sedation?
Okay, I could get down with that.
Just feels like sedation is like one thing, but the sedation makes it sound like a big event.
I actually like sedation better because it applies. It's not specific. It's not singular, because then it could be her sedation at the end. It's sedation. It's the smaller ones. It's the level that society had. It's just sedation in general. Again, it's the theme, very simply stated. So let's go with that.
All right, so just sedation. Yeah, I like it. Sedation works. So Zach, we've got our story here, sedation. Can you hit me with an along the lines?
Yeah. So the along the lines, it's much in the vein of the Princess Leia, Han Solo, Empire Strikes Back moment, where he's about to be frozen in the carbonite, and she finally confesses her love to him and says, "I love you," and Han says back, "I know." Think about a line like that. That's really the moment that we're in. The bone guys, we never really named them, are burrowing into the earth. Humanity's last hope is to be able to get this scientist girl under this machine, going under basically, and in a coma, so that they can use her brainwaves to stop the embryoid and kill the bone guys. So there is a sense of urgency here. So they're not exchanging a ton of language back and forth. But Jake is with her. And he understands what's happening, and he understands that the implications are coming rushing in, just like the bone guys. She is trying to reassure him, and she says, "In this level of sleep, I won't even dream." And he says, "But I will."
Thank you all for listening to StoryFellas, a part of the Pemmican Studios podcast network. Check out our show notes for bonus material, links, and more. To find out more about our current projects, send us messages, and suggest ideas for the show, go to storyfellaspodcast.com. If you liked what you heard, share the show with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to grow this community. Until next time, go make and break those stories.